Hey everyone, this is Sandip back with another video. And in today's video, I'm going to talk about Webpack. So let's directly jump into the video. So let's first understand, or let's jump into a little bit theory about Webpack. So what is Webpack? Webpack is a module bundler which takes a file or multiple files as an input and produces a single or multiple files as an output. I mean, this definition is important because the theory is important. So I can show you a diagram, right? So basically what Webpack does, it takes multiple files. I mean, some files, like take the example of JavaScript files. So you can have JavaScript files, you can have CSS files, or you can have any other file types. Like you can even have a JSON or a text. So Webpack is a module bundler. So it's a bundler which takes, multiple files, multiple different types of files as an input, and it combines all those files together and it produces one file as an output. One, or maybe if you need multiple files also, that is also possible. So if we compare it with a real world example, I just want to give you an example of a page binder, right? So if you have seen that page binder, right? So you can have multiple pages, sheet of pages, right? And you can give those sheet of pages into the binder, and that binder can combine all those files together and it can produce the books, right? I mean, this kind of notes which we can create. If you remember your college days or school days, right? You used to combine all of these pages and we used to produce our notes, something like this. I mean, I'm still doing it in today also. So it's not a bad practice, I would say. So the next part, right? Why you need a Webpack? That question might be coming into your mind, right? So let's jump into a bit of a background of a programming, right? I just want to set the context. We are definitely going to jump into the practical way. So why Webpack? So programs or computer programs, right? They're collection of variables, functions, and objects. You must be knowing that, right? If you're a programmer. And variables, functions, and objects, they are dependent on each other, right? So one variable can be used by multiple functions, or one of the function is calling another function. And one object can have a function can have objects can use variables, right? So all kind of things, right? So they are like these three things: variable, functions, and objects are like they're dependent on each other. So traditionally, if I talk about the way we write JavaScript programs in today's world, so we manage all those dependencies. I mean, say suppose you have multiple files in your program, multiple JavaScript files in your program. We manage all the dependencies manually by ourselves. We need to know like which file will come first, right? So large applications can have several files that needs to be loaded. So in that case, if you're loading multiple files, you're increasing the traffic load on the network, right? So having a single file could be a good idea. So that's why, Webpack helps in managing these dependencies automatically. So you don't need to do manual management of all those dependencies. Webpack is your friend, right? It is going to help you in manage those dependencies automatically and produce fewer number of files as an output. I think I'm talking about more theory, but let's jump into the practical way. So we will see practically how Webpack works, right? So first of all, we'll do the compare and contrast also. So I'm going to give you an example where I'm going to take the traditional way of handling file. I'm just going to show you the example, right? I'm going to create one practical example also. And then we are going to convert that particular example or that program into the Webpack way. So this is exciting, right? We are going to do it practically. So let's jump into it and let's do it. Let's understand this in much more fun way. Okay, so I have this comparison project which I have created inside my Visual Studio. So basically, I have two different HTML files here. First one is a index.html and second one is index webpack.html. So let's first look into the index.html file. So it's it's the traditional way, right? Where say suppose you have a JavaScript application, maybe any kind of application. So you have multiple CSS files, right? So say suppose you have a common CSS file, you have defined your colors, common colors, or some of the commons, padding, margin, and all those layout related things, right? You have written inside your comment.css. You might be having a auth.css which might be related to login and logout, right? And you have a payments page maybe, right? And you have a separate CSS for the payment. So you're loading multiple CSS files here. Similarly, let's come to the JavaScript files, right? So you might have several external dependencies, external JavaScript dependencies. So you might love jQuery, right? So you're using jQuery. So path to jQuery, you're loading jQuery, you're loading Lodash, which is a pretty popular JavaScript library, and your Bootstrap. How can you forget about Bootstrap, right? So Bootstrap is another library. So you have your external JavaScript dependencies also. And then you have your project dependencies, right? So you have util, you have login, logout, user, payment, and app. Now, the order of all of these files is really important. So if I take this utils.js and if I move it here, this is going to break my program. I haven't written the entire, all of the JavaScript files. So I just wanted to tell you, right? So this utils, if I move, because it got some of the common utility methods that has been maybe used by login, logout, or user, or payments, or app, right? And as utils, it is getting loaded after the login page or a logout JavaScript file, right? It's definitely going to break that code. So the order, the dependencies of the objects or the variables or the functions which I have talked about in the theory section, right? That is important, and you need to do it in your own way, right? You have to handle it. That's where, Webpack shines. If I go back to my Webpack example, let's do the comparison, right? So your CSS, right? So you got three CSS here. Your CSS are going to get replaced by just one style sheet, right? So you're going to have one bundle.css file, which is going to be combination of this common auth and payments.css file. Similarly, all of your dependencies, I mean, external dependencies or your project dependencies, all of these files, they're going to combine into one file, and you can have just one JavaScript file that is called bundle.js. And ordering doesn't matter, right? Even if you have put something like this, because you're not managing the ordering by yourself, that has been managed by Webpack, so you don't need to worry about it. And we're going to see it practically. So I'm just going to undo this. And let's do it practically. I'm going to create a simple JavaScript project in a traditional way, how we actually manage the dependencies, and then we will convert that project into a Webpack. So I'm just going to create a new folder here. So maybe I'll create a new folder and I'll say old way. Okay, not the Webpack way, old way. And then I'm going to do it in a Webpack way. And inside this folder, I'm going to create, let's create an index.html file first, because this is going to contain my JavaScript. So I'm going to say index.html, and let's try with some HTML5. And I'm going to keep it as it is. I'm not going to do any changes here. Let's create some JavaScript files, right? So I'm directly going to create inside the old way folder only. So I'll first create the index.js file. And I'm going to create one more file called greeter. So I'm basically creating a greeter application just to keep it really simple, greeter.js. So this greeter.js JavaScript file is going to have a function called greet, which is going to take name as an argument. And by default, I'm going to have some value for the name. So maybe I'll go with guest only, guest. And it's going to return the concatenation of hello plus the name, whatever name you're going to pass it as an argument, right? So this is just going to have a greet function, and it's going to return hello plus the name which we are going to pass. And now I'm going to use this function inside index.js file. So let's call that function called greeter, and I'm going to pass, suppose I will pass my name only, Sandip, and it's going to return that string, right? That greeting string. So I'm going to store it inside a const variable. called greeting. And then finally, I'm going to console.log that greeting string, which is going to get returned, right? Now, I'll go into in my index.html and I'm going to include those JavaScript files. Okay. So here, I mean, if you're doing it an old way, right, you need to keep the dependencies in your mind, right? So now I'm going to do the things in a wrong way first. So let me use the script tag, right? And I'll say source is equals to, first of all, I'm going to include index.js first, maybe. And I'm going to copy this script tag. I'll paste it. And second, next I'm going to use the greeter.js file. Now, if I run this project, what's going to happen, right? So inside my index.js, I'm calling the greeter function, right? And which I'm loading after I'm calling the function. I mean, after I'm loading the file after, and I'm calling the function before I load the file, right? And inside my greeter, I have this greet function, which I'm calling. So you know what's going to happen actually. I'm going to open it in live server and you don't see anything. Nothing has come as output, but we might be having some error here, right? So greeter is not defined. You see here, right? So greeter is not defined because I'm loading the greeter file, right? After the index.js file. Now, if I change the sequencing, if I manage my dependencies pretty well, this program is going to work. So I just saved it. And now if I go back and if I refresh, still greeter is not a function. So maybe I did some mistake. So, okay. So I have a greeter here actually. So maybe I'll do it once again, just to show you the right way. So I'm going to keep my sequence like how it was before. And I'm going to save. And now if I refresh, see that greeter is not defined. We're still getting that error. Now I'm going to change the sequence and I load my index.js file, which is calling the greeter function, right? After this one, you see that? We're getting the output, hello Sandip. So if you're not doing in a Webpack way, if you're doing it in a traditional way, right? I have only two files here, but things can get complicated when you have a bigger project and you have multiple JavaScript files. So managing all those dependencies is really and definitely going to be difficult for you. And you need to manage that dependencies by yourself. And to avoid that, we're going to see how we can do this. I'm going to convert this similar example into the Webpack way. So let's see how we can do this in a Webpack way. Okay, so to do this in a Webpack way, I'm going to create another project here. So I'm going to create a new folder. So let's say Webpack. I'm going to say Webpack-demo. So this is a Webpack way, right? So Webpack demo, I need to open this folder actually inside the terminal. And we need to have a package.json file because to use Webpack, we need to install Webpack as a dependency. So we need that Webpack code inside our project. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to create the package.json. So I'm going to initialize my project npm init with some of the default options. Okay, I got the package.json created. If we go back, you will be able to see the package.json file. Now we need to install some of the dependencies, right? So I'm going to install two different dependencies here. And if I remember my dependencies correctly, I need to install Webpack and Webpack CLI. So that's what I'm going to install. So let's do that. So I'm going to clear my console first. Let's install Webpack. And I'm going with the latest version. When I'm recording this video, I don't know what version is going to come, right? When you're watching this video, that version can change. So I would suggest, just copy and paste the version number, something like this. You just specify the version, something like this here. Okay, so you can copy and paste that version number from the package.json file that I'm going to share with you on the GitHub, right? So npm install Webpack, and I would need a Webpack-CLI also, another dependencies, and I'm going to have them as a dev dependencies because I don't need it for a production one. So npm install Webpack, Webpack CLI, save dev, and I'm going to press enter. Let's wait for the dependencies to install, and it should be pretty quick, I would say. Let's see. Okay, that was quick. Now, if I go back to my project and go back to my package.json, you see that we got two dev dependencies. One is Webpack, and I got the 5.7.1.0 version, and for CLI, I got 4.9.2. So these two different versions I got. Now next we have Webpack, right? Now let's use Webpack. So I'm going to steal some of the files from here. So I'm going to copy all of these three different files, So I'm going to copy all of these three files from here, and I'm going to paste inside my Webpack demo. I just want to save some time, I just don't want to write the same code again. Now we need to convert this code, this JavaScript code, into something called the latest version of JavaScript, right? So I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to start with my greeter.js file. And I have created this greeter function, right? So I'm going to export this function here. So export default, and so that I can use this function somewhere else. I can import this function first of all, and I can use it, right? So greeter, I have created a function, right? And have exported it. And I'm going to import this function inside my index.js file because I want to use the greeter function. So you just need to write import greeter from /greeter, right? And now I have the greeter function, so I can call the greeter function, which is returning me the greeting. And I'm just logging that particular greeting here, right? So now I have now if I want, to run this project here inside my browser, so maybe I have already something running here, right? So maybe I'll try to open this in live server just to show you. But first of all, I need to go back to my index.html file, and I don't need all of these files, right? So I cannot run it because I need to import those files first, So maybe let's try to import and I forgot to do one thing, one of the most important thing, that is I've created my files directly inside the Webpack demo folder, but I have to create them inside the source folder actually. So let me create a source folder, and I'm going to move all of these files into my source. And probably I'm going to keep my index.html outside, but I'm going to keep my source, greeter and index.js inside the source file. Okay, source folder. So let me try this. Maybe I'll try with source index.js. And if I try to run this index.html inside a live server, let's see what happens. So if I go something like this, and if I go to console, right? So cannot use import statement outside a module, right? So basically, my browser, it doesn't understand the latest version of JavaScript. So somehow, I need to convert this code. And for that purpose only, we're going to use Webpack. And Webpack is going to convert this code into the browser understandable JavaScript. And I'm not going to have multiple files, right? The index and then the greeter also. I'm just going to have a one file. So I'm going to keep it like this. Let's use Webpack now. I'm just going to show you the power of Webpack. So I'll go back to my terminal, and I'm just going to run a command called npx webpack, and we should see the magic happening here. So I'm going to press enter, and if everything goes well, see that? I see something has happened, right? So I can see warning in configuration. The mode option has not been set. I'm going to talk about this in a bit. Webpack will fall back to production, set mode option to development. So you can set it to none to disable any default behavior. So now what happened actually? So some magic has happened, it has created this main.js file or some kind of file, some kind of bundle file. So if I go back to my folder structure now, maybe I'm going to close this one. And now you see that, right? This dist folder wasn't there before, right? It got popped up somehow magically. And inside that, I have my main.js file. So this is a file which has been created by Webpack. So it has bundled my greeter and index.js file together. Now I have only two files, but imagine if you have hundreds of files, right? The Webpack is going to manage all those dependencies by itself. So it has combined my greeter and index, and it has produced this main.js file. And somehow, I need to have my index.html also here, but I can try this maybe. So I'll go back to my index, and I'll try the dist. And inside dist, I'm going to say main.js. And now if I go back to my browser, and if I refresh, I don't need to refresh, it got refreshed automatically. I see the output. So you can see the magic of Webpack, right? So as I said, Webpack helps in managing these dependencies automatically. So I didn't do anything, right? It has produced a single file, that bundle or that main.js file. And I just need to use that single main.js file. If you have the CSS file also, you can do the same thing for the CSS file also. Now, if I go back to my terminal, we saw some of the mode related error here, right? So mode option has not been set. So Webpack, but I have ran it basically just in a default manner. But there is a way, you can create your own Webpack configuration also. So let's talk about creating your own Webpack configuration also. So I'm just going to create a configuration file inside my Webpack demo only folder. And I'm going to say Webpack dash config dash js, sorry, .js actually. So Webpack config .js. So maybe I will go with webpack.config.js. And here you can create the configuration where you can change the name of the file, you can change the name of this folder, whether you want to keep that in dist folder or somewhere else. All of these things we can manage through this configuration file. So I'm going to just write module.exports. So this is the syntax we actually use, and this is nothing but an object. And now I can define the entry. The first property that I can use is entry. And my entry is nothing but I know that I have a source folder, and inside my source folder, I have something called index.js file. So this is the entry. So I'm telling Webpack, hey, Webpack, where you're going to start to bundle my files. So first of all, you need to go into source folder and pick up the index.js file. And from there, you need to start bundling. This is the first page of that sheet of pages, I told you, right? So bundler, I'm telling the bundler where to pick up the first page. So this index.js is my entry, and I can configure the output also, output option. So this is nothing but an object where, I can specify multiple properties. I can change the file name. So I can say file name. So it was by default generating the main.js file. Maybe I want to change it to bundle.js files. I can change it to bundle.js file. Even I can define the path also, right? So say, suppose I want to change the path, right? So I can define the path also. So I need to put a comma here. And for path, defining a path, actually, we need to use a path module, because somehow, when we build it, we need to specify the path also. So I'm going to use the path node module actually. So I'm going to say require, and path is a built-in module of node. So I'm going to say just path. So I want path, and I'm just going to use this path object to resolve or to specify the absolute path. I can't specify the relative path here. So I'm going to use a couple of Node.js option like dir name. Directory name is a current directory. So where my webpack.config.js file reside right now, it's inside the Webpack demo directory, right? So this is a directory name. And from there, you just go and find out the dist folder. So I'm telling Webpack where you want to produce the output. You can change it to something like output also if you want to produce inside output. So it's going to create that output folder, and it's going to put that output bundle.js inside the output folder. So I'm going to go with the dist only for now. So directory name, which is a current directory. So Webpack, this webpack.js file is inside Webpack demo basically. And I'm saying, okay, inside that same folder, you have a dist folder, and just create the bundle.js file inside the dist folder. And the last option which I'm going to specify is a mode, which the error we got, right? So mode, set the mode value. So I'm going to set the mode value to none, because this is just an example. So we can have multiple values here. We can have a development, we can have the production if you're creating the production version. But for now, I'm going to just specify the none. Now I'll go back to my package.json also, and I'm going to create a start script here, or maybe a build script. And inside build, I'm just going to call a Webpack. So now instead of using npx Webpack, I'll just go back. I'm going to clear my console. And this time I'm going to say npm run build command. So I'm going to use the build command. Let's press the enter. And you see that we got the asset bundle.js created. And if I go back to my folder structure, you see here, right? I got the main.js, which was created previously, and I have my bundle.js file. And you see here, right? A lot of code, but it's somewhere it's going to contain our greeter function, right? So now I'm going to use this bundle.js inside my index.html. So instead of main.js, I'm going to use bundle. And now if I go back and refresh, see that? I got hello Sandip. So I think that's it. This is what I wanted to cover in this video. I just wanted to show you we are in 21st, I mean 2022 now. And if you are still using, the way traditional way of managing dependencies, you switch to Webpack. Webpack is really popular. Old, I mean, it's been a while in the industry, and I thought of starting a series maybe. So this is first video, and I'll come up with more videos around Webpack. So you can give me the feedback about this video in the comment section. You can tell me like how this video went, and if you want to see more of Webpack videos or more of other topic videos, you can tell me in the comment option. So until then, I think I'm going to stop here. Until then, I'm going to come back with a new video for sure next time. So you take care and goodbye.